Okay, welcome everyone. We'll go ahead and call this special meeting to order. Let's go ahead and start with a roll call.
Okay, Shell Anderson,
Present.
Jay Arnold,
Here.
Todd Bayreuther,
Here.
Justin Borgold, Justin.
I see him logged in, but
I'm
here.
Okay, thank you. I saw his name. And Micah, looks like he's in the,
Yeah, he should be moving over shortly.
okay. Micah Chappelle, come back. Tony Doan,
Here.
Damon Doyle,
Here.
Tom Handy,
Here.
Roger Haringa,
Here.
Matthew Hepner, Craig Holt,
Here.
Ty Mincer, Ben O'Mara,
Here.
Pete Reiki,
Here.
Katie Sheehan.
Here.
So let's go back. Micah, did you join us?
Yes, I'm here, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, and our ex officio representative Keith Gaynor, Lauren Lathrop, Senator John Levick, Representative Alex Ramel,
Here.
Senator Linda Wilson,
Here.
and our Assistant Attorney General Derek Meyer-Bachdahl.
I'm here, thank you.
Thank you. So we do have a quorum.
Okay. Is there anyone from the public that would like to be recognized? Pam, go ahead.
Tim Atterbury, Associated General Contractors of Washington.
Thank you. Ty, go ahead.
Ty Jennings, Cascade Natural Gas.
Thank you. Larry, go ahead.
Larry Andrews Mechanical.
Thank you. Brian, go ahead.
Good morning, Brian Rogers with International Association of Plumbing Mechanical Officials, sitting in for Jed Shurman.
Thank you. Andrea, go ahead.
Andrea Smith with the Building Industry Association of Washington.
Thank you. Okay. Let's go ahead and move on to agenda item number 2, which is review and approve the agenda. Phil, go ahead.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as written.
I'll second that.
Then we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Craig, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question, how this meeting even came to be called and what's the purpose of it and intent other than a discussion of something we discussed several weeks ago, and how it was called without consultation to every member of the council before I approve or reject this.
Thank you, Craig. Derek, would you like to help us out on that?
Sure, but before I do, wanted to see if Stoyan had any comments he wanted to make.
No, the meeting was requested by 8 council members, and after coordinating with Dirk, we scheduled the meeting.
Yeah, and just a little bit more insight on that. The Open Public Meetings Act, which is chapter 19, I'm sorry, 40. Let me make sure I had some notes here, so forgive me while I'm looking at them. Yeah, it's 4230 080 allows for the calling of a special meeting by either the chair of a governing body or a majority of members. Here, a majority of members who are listed on the agenda and on the notice of the calling of the meeting indicated that they wanted to have a special meeting. and generally indicated the purpose of the meeting, which is identified in the agenda.
Why was I not consulted? Was there a specific number of 8 that were consulted to call this meeting, or was I the only one left out at the consultation?
I can't speak to any consultation, Craig. I didn't participate in any communications directly with members. I would defer to Stoyan or to Tony on how that happened.
Fair enough. Thank you.
I received 2 emails from council members requesting a special meeting, and I believe Tony received 6 or 7. I can't remember.
That's correct.
So our job is to facilitate the meeting again after consulting with our attorneys what the law says. We're not really the staff, even the chair, we don't have the say to say no or yes on the council meeting. I mean, the law is clear on the subject.
Yeah, and if I can add something that I think you, Stoyan, I just want Craig to understand that there is, in this provision of the OPMA, there is no specific requirement that there be a consultation with the entire council if a majority of members seek to call a meeting. I'd also note that to my knowledge, and I think staff can support this, there isn't a history of council members affirmatively requesting special meetings. And so there isn't any process in the bylaws or custom to address the process and what that looks like.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that from both you and Stoyan.
Okay, any further discussion on reviewing and approving the agenda? Sorry, Senator Wilson, sorry. For some reason, the hand like blended in. It looked like I couldn't see it.
Yeah, I know. I need to change the color of that. Thank you. Yes, so from what I'm gathering here is that we're going to have a discussion probably about the 2/3 requirement. And is the intention then to re-vote because you didn't meet that level? Is that what this is about? Because this wouldn't be reconsideration.
Well, if you don't, Tony, if you don't mind me jumping in, from the communications that Tony received, the interest of the majority of council members who requested the special meeting was to address the issue of the 2/3 majority, the 2/3 threshold that we'll talk about under the State Building Code Council's organic laws, and to take action on the commercial code. What action the council ultimately decides to take to that is up to the council. And so I would defer to any council members who want to make a motion. You make a good point, Senator Wilson, regarding reconsideration. And if members want to talk at an appropriate time regarding what Robert's Rules provides, I can't pretend to be an expert parliamentarian, but I have reviewed at the request of Stoyan potential options that the council could consider to revisit the issue of the commercial code, and we can have that conversation.
Okay.
Micah, go ahead.
I'm just going to kind of go with Senator Wilson here. And Greg, I'm trying to struggle in here too, Derek, on to approve the agenda means we're going to take another action on the energy code, which we've already done. That action failed. So this should be an action for reconsideration, which is not listed in the agenda. So I agree with Greg that the agenda would be, I wouldn't vote to approve the agenda either, because we've already taken action. That action is recorded. We would have to move to reconsider. So I don't understand why we need a special council meeting for reconsideration. And, and maybe some clarification is needed for other members. So thanks, Derek.
Sure, yeah, and again, I welcome a conversation about this, and it looks like I'm going to have to just keep my camera on the whole time in this meeting, which is fine. I don't want there to be, well, I want to be careful about having a conversation about what the 2/3 requirement is, whether it's a requirement and what happened at the last meeting. But just to push back, if I can, Mike, on what did happen at the November 28th meeting, the motion to approve the energy code did not fail. It met the required 8-vote threshold to approve, but it did not meet the 2/3 threshold that is set forth in statute. That requires a 2/3 threshold, that if a 2/3 threshold isn't met, then the legislature needs to approve the commercial code. So that's the background, and we'll talk a little bit more about the background. The question of what's on the agenda is to my knowledge, no specific member requested this special meeting solely for the purpose of reconsideration or specifically to bring a question before the assembly again. It was to address the issue of the 2/3 threshold and to take action on the commercial code. So I guess to put a finer point on it, there wasn't a request to call this meeting for the specific purpose of reconsideration or for bringing a question before the assembly, and accordingly, the agenda doesn't reflect that.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I also would note that when we were dealing with this at our last meeting, this 2/3 threshold did not come up in the discussion. And if it did, there were a number of actions that we could have taken at the time, including, to my recollection, we did not have the chair's vote on the record. And so, I think this is part of, this agenda item is part of cleaning that up versus any kind of reconsideration. That's how I look at it. Thank you.
Senator Wilson.
Okay, so it is unclear on the agenda what the actual action is to be taken of the council. So what exactly are we taking action on? Because this action on the commercial code has already been taken in December. So, or in November. So now we're in December. So what other action could be taken if it isn't to revote? Because you can't reconsider unless it's the same day as you voted. The reconsideration would have to be done on the same day as was voted in November to be legal. So is this just so that we can avoid having it go to the legislature?
Well, I would defer to specific members on that issue, Senator Wilson, if I can just quickly respond. And just so that there's no doubt about it, I agree that a motion for reconsideration would be out of order. The procedural rules, parliamentary rule governing the council under the council's bylaws is Robert's rules. And Robert's rules is very clear that motions for reconsideration need to be made on the same day that a motion is approved or rejected or the next day. And that is not the case here. So an action that is taken by the council, if the council elects to take action today with respect to the energy code, the commercial energy code, could potentially take one of two forms. Could be a motion to rescind and then a vote on the energy code if the motion to rescind passes, or potentially a motion to amend the motion that was previously adopted. Under Robert's rules, those are two forms of motions that allow a question to be brought again to the council, and those are potential pathways.
Okay.
Greg, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I fully support an education. I would fully like to understand the rules of the 2/3 and what the impact of that is, but I object any further action being taken based specifically, what Derek just said. It doesn't seem like it's appropriate to take further action, and neither the rescind or change. It almost feels like there's an attempt to revote and recount votes to pass it without the 2/3, and I object to that if that's the implied intent here. Thank you.
Shell, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll speak to why I suggested we reconvene the council. Right now, if we voted a year ago to pass a commercial energy code, and then the CRA Berkeley decision came out, the interpretation of EPCA, and then this council and the TAG spent a good deal of time trying to lower the risk with regards to EPCA with a commercial code. My understanding, and I could be wrong, but my understanding is so we voted last in November to pass the EPCA de-risking provisions of the commercial energy code. But depending upon how you read the law, it may require legislative action. If the legislature fails to act, then what would go in force on March 15th would be the version of the commercial energy code that does not have the EPCA de-risking provisions in them. So that would open up the council to more risk, in my unexpert opinion. So we either have something go in effect March 15th that has higher risk. If we want the council to have our risk in our own hands, we don't want to have it subject to a legislative something or other that I don't know exactly what that is. So if we want to control our own risk, we would want to hit the 2/3 majority for passing this. Otherwise, what goes in force on March 15th, in my inexpert opinion, would be the version of the commercial energy code without the EPCA de-risking provisions. So that's why I would like, and the 2/3 majority thing was not, I was not aware of that at the last meeting. And so I think it would be important to put our risk in our own hands rather than put it in the hands of the legislature. That's why I would ask to reconvene the meeting.
Damon, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could we take a step back and share with the rest of the council the specific request made by the members and who the members were?
The members are listed at the top of the agenda. So the Ty Menzer, Roger Haringa, Peter Reiki, Chael Anderson, Katie Sheehan, Ben O'Mura, Todd Byruther, and Jay Arnold.
Gotcha. And can you also share the specific request that was made?
Yeah, give me a. Most of the, I don't know if it's all of them because I don't have all of them in front of me, but the first couple I'm looking at is I've been made aware of that a 2/3 majority was needed to approve the amended CR 102 to move into final rulemaking. Therefore, I would request an emergency meeting be held prior to December 15th. And if any other council members disagree with that request, and that's the reason they requested it, then they can speak now. Katie, go ahead.
Senator Wilson was ahead of me.
All right, Senator Wilson, go ahead.
So in what you just read, it said it didn't pass. or it didn't pass with the 2/3 vote.
It didn't pass with a 2/3 vote.
Right, so it passed.
The motion
And
carried.
everything's good, right? The motion carried, all right. So unless you have a reason to rescind and revote, meaning there must be an error somewhere, or what would you be amending to be able to use the amend the motion that was already adopted? What are either of the two that would allow us to even do this? Because I believe this is improper according to Robert's rules. The vote was taken. It didn't come out the way you wanted it to. So people are wanting to revote so that the legislature doesn't have to approve it. I can promise you that I would make sure that the legislature address this, knowing what's on the line. So to take it out of the proper way to have it go directly to the legislature so that the legislature can weigh in on this, because you don't want it to. I don't believe that you're making the case to revote this so that you can avoid having it go to the legislature with these, I believe, are not proper to rescind and revote, because you have to have a reason to rescind it and you don't have anything to amend. And it's also not, as Micah pointed out, it's not on this particular reason to be here to vote is not on the agenda. So I don't believe it's properly been put out there either.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Tony, do you mind if I jump in for a second? I just wanted to respond to Senator Wilson's contention that there needs to be a reason under Robert's rules. And my review of Robert's rules with respect to motions to rescind or to amend previously adopted, the Robert's rules does not provide that there has to be a specific reason for it. If it's the will of the assembly, a majority of members to take appropriate action, they can take action. That's not to say, of course, that rescinding here or amending is a good idea. I would defer to council members on that. But in my review of the Roberts rules, I don't see anything in that would require that there has to be a specific reason for it.
Katie, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. So my understanding, and part of the reason why I joined in on calling for the meeting, was understanding the 2/3 requirement. So by my count, on the 28th for the commercial code, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, it was 9 to 4. Is that right? So 9 to 4, is that 2/3 vote? Or is it 2/3 vote of the entire council? And if so, we were under we would have needed Tony to vote so that we could get the full council's the full opportunity. And I mean, when we so that was the question that I had, and you know, understanding that Robert's rules is a thick book, and we all make mistakes or overlook or oversights, and I just think that it's important to fully understand the requirement. So, and I'd be interested in what Dirk has to say about that piece.
Well, thanks, Katie. I'm prepared. I don't want to lose sight of the fact that currently the discussion is with regard to approving the agenda, and I am prepared. I think others too, to talk about that 2/3 requirement. I keep calling it a requirement. It's technically not a requirement, but that 2/3 vote threshold during the agenda item, right? That's set for that. But I will say that it is true that the vote on the commercial code at the November 28th meeting was 9 to 4. And you know, candidly, you had a council member not at the meeting. Pete Reiki wasn't there. I don't know how Pete would have voted on it one way or another, but that ultimately potentially puts you below that threshold for the 2/3. And I also want folks to know that in my view, the 2/3 threshold number that would be required under the statute in the energy code provisions. I was just looking for the right number. I'm sure it's floating around somewhere. It's actually on the agenda. That threshold number is 10. Okay, so that's my understanding of the law. And because the council vote approving the commercial code amendments did not have 10 votes, it did not meet that 2/3 threshold. Katie, I don't know if that was precisely responsive to your question, but I wanted to get that out there.
Yeah, just in the event that that happens and the chair did not vote, then, you know, that I didn't see a answer to that in Robert's rules. But again, I know that I understand that we're talking about the agenda. We don't have to get into that, but that was in terms of why the meeting was called, and that was the question that I was. Thanks.
Understood.
Roger, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to say a lot of similar stuff to what Katie said. I would like to, again, the reason I called the meeting was to have this conversation because I don't know. I'm not a Robert's Rules expert by any means. I have questions about when is it requested that the chair either say yay, nay, or abstain, which did not happen. The 2/3, to be honest, my understanding of the 2/3 would have been 2/3 of the people that voted, not 2/3 of the total council. So I don't know that. If I had been made aware of that at the on the 28th, I would have asked for the chair to either vote yay, nay, or abstain. And then ultimately, I also have a question about moving forward. We passed the commercial energy code with an adoption date of March 15th. And I don't know, I have doubts whether I would be curious whether the legislature could act before March 15th, or if we have a something that is not, not proper or not able to move forward, and do we need to address it? And I don't know the answers to those. So that was why I called the meeting, is to really have this conversation that we're having right now, that I would like to go ahead and approve the agenda and start getting into the actual agenda item. But that's just that's a analysis of why I thought it was important for us together.
Todd, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, likewise, I asked for the meeting so we could have the council discussion and seek public input, which is agenda item 3. So while I've learned a lot already, I think can we call the question to decide if we're having that meeting or not? Is it allowed?
Have an amendment if that's the case.
To call the question?
We need a second on that.
I'll second.
Second.
Okay.
I have an amendment.
Okay.
Go ahead. Okay, so I would amend the agenda to strike the last item for a vote of the CR 103. Pete.
I'll second.
Point of order, are amendments allowed after the question has been called?
I said I had an amendment twice before you, yes, I can amend this before we vote on it.
I had my hand up for the same reason. I was just trying to be polite and go through the hands. I don't know if we just need to jump in to make motions.
Okay. We have an amendment and a second. Would you like to speak to that, Senator Wilson?
Well, I believe that if it was specific on there that we were going to either be amending the motion that was voted on in November, or we are rescinding and revoting for the purposes of avoiding the legislature, that is not what is on the agenda. I don't think that this is proper, and we should be removing that from the agenda.
Micah, would you like to speak to the second?
Yes, I would. I think the 8 folks that called the meeting are justified. I believe that item number 4 is an error, especially since Derek provided us 2 alternate paths to possibly revote this. And so I don't think that needs to be included on item 4. That is something that is misleading. So I think that the 8 folks should go, okay, yeah, no problem. We can vote the agenda forward, remove item 4, because we still have 2 options that Derek mentioned that we could look at revoting this possibly if that's the direction they really want to go. So that's why I wanted to second that or make that motion, was just to remove item 4. Thanks.
Okay. Further discussion, Damon?
I'll just note that we picked March 15th as a date so that these rules could sit through the legislative session. RCW 1927A.025. Number 3 is pretty specific. Any disputed provisions within an amendment presented to the legislature shall be approved by the legislature before going into effect. A disputed provision is one which was adopted by the State Building Code Council with less than 2/3 majority vote. There's a reason that's in there. You know, we passed it. We did pass the code out, but we need to give the legislature, who's represented by the people of this state, the opportunity to confirm it. So I will also speak in favor of striking item 4.
Thank you. Cheryl, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I'm not sure why this motion is in order at all, but I'm also not sure why the motion has any relevance. It just says possible council vote. I don't see how having something that is possible would in any case want or need to be stricken. So I'll be voting against this. I don't understand why the motion would be made unless it's to. I can't imagine. I don't know why the motion is being made.
But Tony, do you mind if I jump in for a minute here? I just want to caution folks about the agenda. One of the things that we all need to be careful about here is that when a special meeting is called, action that's taken in the special meeting must be consistent with the items on the agenda that's distributed prior to the meeting when the meeting is called. And if the council is considering taking action that's not identified on the agenda, there would be risk that that action would potentially be deemed void. So we want to be careful as much as we can to not tinker too egregiously with the excuse me, with the agenda. The agenda item number 4 does call for, and I'm not endorsing, of course, the council take any specific action here. I would just note that the item number 4 does leave some space for the council to take action that it thinks is appropriate in light of the conversation that we've been having and will have with respect to that 2/3 threshold. And if you were to vote to remove that from the agenda, there could be some concern that the council would not be able to take an action on this issue if it's not there.
Thank you. Representative Ramel?
Derek made the point I was hoping to make better than I would have made it. I'm speaking against this motion.
Craig, go ahead.
I'm not speaking to the amendment. I just wanted to voice something prior to that. When is a good time to do that?
Go ahead.
So you asked, the chair asked earlier if there's an objection to this meeting. After listening to all the conversation, object to the meeting. There is an apparent desire to bypass the legislature. Even if it's for good intent, I object to the opportunity to do that and prevent the legislature from doing what they are slated to do by the voice of the people to echo what Damon said. So I just object to this meeting and we'll be voting no on the agenda. Thank you.
Roger, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to clarify, I'm not saying that we're taking we would be taking the decision away from the legislature. I was talking about the schedule. If it's going to go to the legislature, do we need to you know, talk about a modification to the date? I also I'm forgetting my other point. So go ahead and talk to Chell and I'll raise my hand again.
Chell, go ahead.
Yeah, regarding the schedule, people using these codes, or that will be using these codes, have had the codes delayed twice. And it's, as an architect, it really is challenging when you don't have any certainty. So leaving up the legislature to act, which may or may not happen, I don't think serves the people of Washington very well in terms of certainty of if and when codes go in force. And I think it's just another way of delaying and removing the force of the energy code.
Senator Wilson.
Yes, first of all, I'd like to make a point that on the day that we voted on the commercial code, we also voted on the energy code or the residential code, and that was 10-3 on the same day. So this is 9-4 on the same day. The agenda says that we are going to take a vote on CR 103P final adoption. That was done in November. And then secondly, the legislature is out on March 8th. There's such a thing as called the emergency clause. So if it has to be done by the 15th of March, the emergency clause could be put in on the date that, or becomes effective on the date that the governor signs it. So there is no chance of this issue not being addressed in a timely manner with the legislature. But as has been stated, this is the proper course of action. And the only reason, and I've heard reasons now why we're supposed to be revoting, because it didn't go the right way according to a portion of these members on this council. It's unfortunate that the rules weren't understood on the day that it was made, but doing these rescinding and revoting is going to look rather shady, in my opinion, to the public, because if the only reason to do this, because you're not changing anything, is to revote so that it doesn't go to the legislature, that's circumventing the intent of the law. Thank you.
Roger, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a direct question to Dirk before I can vote yay or nay on the amendment. You've talked about two potential paths that the council could take today. I have not heard, or we have not heard exactly what those are in detail. Would those be proper under item 4 of the agenda?
Yes.
Okay, that's all I needed to know. Thank you. I will be voting no on the amendment.
Micah, go ahead.
Thanks. Since I was second on this, I have no issues whether it's in there or not at this point. I think it's irrelevant. It sounds like we're going to get some type of vote is where this meeting is going, which is fine. And I think there's some misunderstandings. I think I heard Chell mention that some of this is just to delay the energy code. I have no interest in delaying the codes any further. I think the March 15th is too far as it is. So is what I'm voting for is to remove this, because I would rather see the package we originally voted for requiring heat pumps go through. And if the legislator wanted to do something different, then they can do so by taking action on what we voted for but voted down at the last meeting. So I'm not delaying here, Chael, at all. So I don't want that to occur. So if this motion fails, then we'll approve the agenda. Thanks.
Representative Ramel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just ask members of this council not to impugn the motives of other members of the council. We've heard in the last few minutes conversation that these actions would be considered shady, or that some members of the council are trying to circumnavigate the intent of the legislature. I don't think we should be impugning the motives of each other in this body. Second point I would make, and then hopefully we can quickly move to a vote, is just that with all respect to the good senator, no member of the legislature can commit to an outcome of the coming legislative session. We just, no one of us gets to make the decision about what the legislature will or won't do in the coming months. This is a short session coming up. Folks have been scheduling and planning to get as much done as possible. This has not been on the radar, and so I don't think we can commit to one direction or another for that body. We can't say what will happen in the legislature. Thanks.
Okay, with that, we'll take a roll call on the amendment to the motion, which is to remove agenda item number 4.
Okay, Chell Anderson,
Nope.
Jay Arnold,
No.
Todd Bayreuther,
No.
Justin Borgo,
Yes.
Micah Chappelle,
Yes.
Damon Doyle,
Yes.
Tom Handy,
Yes.
Roger Haringa,
No.
Matthew Hepner,
No.
Greg Holt,
Yes.
Ty Menser,
No.
Ben Omura,
No.
Pete Reiki,
No.
Katie Sheehan.
No.
Motion fails 5-9.
Okay. We have a motion to approve the agenda as is. With that, we'll take a roll call.
Chell Anderson,
Yes.
Jay Arnold,
Yes.
Todd Bayreuther,
Aye.
Justin Borgo,
No.
Micah Chappelle,
No.
Damon Doyle,
No.
Tom Handy,
No.
Roger Haringa,
Yes.
Matthew Hepner,
Yes.
Greg Holt,
No.
Ty Menser,
Yes.
Ben Omura,
Yes.
Pete Reiki,
Yes.
Katie Sheehan.
Motion carries 9-5. Okay, with that, we'll move on to agenda item number 3, council discussion of RCW 1927A-025 condition that Washington State Energy Code commercial provisions passed with less than 2/3 majority vote require legislative approval before going into effect, including the possible preemptive effect of the Federal Energy Policy and Conservation Act of 1975, based on the recent U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit ruling in CRA versus City of Berkeley. We've had, I think, dipped our toes into that discussion already. If there's anything further, speak now. Damon, go ahead.
Might it be helpful to go ahead and put that RCW up on the screen?
SBCC staff, would you be able to do that? And Todd, go ahead.
Thank you. So as we read this, is it correct to say that the adopted provisions, let's use those words, from December of last year are superseded by now a disputed provision? Is that the correct terminology and understanding?
Tony, do you mind me to, if I jump in real quick,
Oh, go ahead.
to respond? Yeah, because this isn't easy to track, and so I want to everybody at least to understand my understanding of where we're at right now. So back in, and my dates here might be wrong, so I encourage Stoyan or someone smarter than me to correct me. But the Washington State Energy Code commercial was adopted back in 2022. And it was adopted, when was it? Back in April, right? And the motion adopting it was passed on a vote of 11-3. So I'm providing this just by way of background. In May of 2023, the council voted to extend the effective date to October 2023. Why is that? You'll recall that at or around the time that the commercial code was adopted, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals issued a decision in the case of California Restaurant Association versus City of Berkeley that raised real questions regarding whether the heat pump proposals that had been adopted by the council on the commercial code, whether those were preempted under EPCA. And I should note too, for those of you who are wondering what the status of that federal lawsuit is, the one that is the California Restaurant Association versus City of Berkeley, there was a petition for the entire Ninth Circuit to consider that case on what we call en banc, the whole Ninth Circuit, and that petition is still pending, at least as I sit here. So that case was decided. The council elected to make some choices regarding moving forward with those specific provisions, Todd, not the entire commercial code, but just those specific provisions with regard to heat pumps. In both, I should be clear, in both the commercial and in the residential code. We're only talking about the commercial code today, though, so I'm going to be focusing on that. In the council vote in September of 2023, the council voted to direct staff to initiate the CR 102 process for rulemaking. This was after the tags were convened to consider changes to the energy code. I see Micah's hand is up, and I'm going to assume, Micah, that you have a question that you're asking now about something that I've just said. So I'm going to stop and ask if you want to ask that question.
I'll wait. I want you to go through what you're saying. I don't want to interrupt. I'll wait. I do have a question, but I think it can come at the end of what you're talking about. Thanks.
Okay, good. And by the way, from a chronology perspective, if I'm missing anything here, because I did take some time to piece together the chronology so that we're just all on the same page about it. If I miss anything, please correct me. Dates are not always my forte. So what happened in September? Well, you'll recall in September of 2023, there was a vote taken to initiate the formal rulemaking process through the CR 102, where there would be public hearings and the like on those proposed changes. And that was a vote of 10-2. Those rulemaking hearings were held. And at your last meeting, the November 28th special meeting, the council took action on approving the CR 103, right? The code adoption form and code language to become effective March 15th. That was both for the commercial code and for the residential code. As we've discussed before, the vote for the residential code was, I think it was 10-3. And the vote for the commercial energy code was 9-4, which placed it under this threshold that, thank you, Damon, for suggesting it be put on the screen, RCW 1927A025. I'll just read that so everybody's on the same page regarding what it provides. It says that decisions to amend the Washington State Energy Code for new non-residential buildings, commercial code, shall be made prior to December 15th of any year. and shall not take effect before the end of the regular legislative session in the next year. So I heard some suggestions in the previous conversation that the legislature needs to act potentially before December 15th, or at least I thought I heard that. That's not what the statute says. It says that decisions to amend the energy code have to be made before December 15th, which is in a few days. The statute goes on to say that any disputed provision within an amendment presented to the legislature shall be approved by the legislature before going into effect. So that refers to disputed provisions. If there's a disputed provision in an amendment to the code, it has to be presented to the legislature to be approved before going into effect. And a disputed provision, what is that? Well, the statute tells us is one in which one that was adopted by the State Building Council with less than a 2/3 majority vote. So at the November 28th meeting, with the 9-4 vote approving the motion to adopt the amendments to the Washington State Energy Code commercial, that in my view fell below the 2/3 threshold because it was not 10. And accordingly, the legislature would need to approve those amendments before they go into effect. What's the consequence of that? Well, if the legislature doesn't approve those amendments during the next legislative session, then I think I heard someone before suggest that the energy code that was adopted right back in April would go into effect. And I think that that's correct. And that would be the energy code commercial that includes the heat pump proposals that that were addressed through the series of rulemaking hearings and amendments that wrapped up last month. Now, I hope that was clear, because if it wasn't, I want people to ask me questions, but that's the chronology and that's the law.
Thank you, Derek. Micah, go ahead.
Thank you, Derek. That was super helpful. And you answered my question and my point, which was if no action or further action is taken either today or by the legislature, that what we adopted last year is in effect and will be in effect March 15th. This is an alternate rule to what we've already adopted. So again, we would then require heat pumps for what we had previously adopted. And I think that's the direction the state wanted to go. And that's the state that we voted. That's where we voted. We did get some recommendations maybe to modify that, but I don't believe that our modifications have mitigated the risk. So you have two levels of risk. And I think Derek mentioned that. One is maybe a little higher. As he just told us, the en banc ruling has not been made. So we don't even know if this ruling by the 3-judge panel of the Ninth Circuit is going to stand until we get the mandate, whether or not the entire Ninth Circuit doesn't take this up. So which level of risk do we go with? So Derek answered my question, and that is the code we adopted last year would stand if no further action is taken and the legislature fails to take any action on this, which may occur. And again, we would still have a code come March 15th to implement and use. And it might need some modified training, but probably very little. Sounds like you would need more training based on this new amendment than you would on the previous one. So I think I'm fine where we stand, and thank you for the clarifications, Derek. Appreciate it.
Damon, go ahead.
Just to elaborate on what Mike has shared, bear in mind that the residential provisions did get the 10 votes for the 2/3 majority. It would just be the commercial that would need to be addressed by the legislature or not. And I think the important thing here is that this particular statute is very, very clear. There's a reason that we have till December 15th so that the legislature can act on it. All this does is it, because there's disputed provisions, it essentially somewhat requires them to act on it or asks them to act on it. And again, we're just 15 members here. I'd rather turn this over to the elected representatives of the people. So that's my thoughts.
Todd, did you have something?
Sure, but I can let Representative Ramel go first.
Okay, Representative Ramel, go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Appreciate it. I guess what really stands out to me here is a couple of things. One, the legislature has asked this body to come forward with the code, right? The intention that the legislature has is for this body to reach as close to consensus as possible and advance the code. That's why the requirement for the 2/3 majority is in this provision. And I guess I really want to emphasize that Pete was unable to attend the meeting in November. And I think his vote is a meaningful part of the voice of this body. So I want to make sure that all members of this body have an opportunity to weigh in. The second point that I would make is that the number one thing I hear, not just from the building industry, but from industry and business in general, is that confusion about what the rules are is the most frustrating thing about dealing with government. And we can do something to improve the clarity about what the rules will be. If we don't take action today, there will be uncertainty created for folks who are trying to design buildings that are going to be built after March 15th. Folks won't know what the rules are going to be in Q2, Q3, Q4 next year if we don't move and take action. We should do that. We should give folks clarity about what that will be. We can't, no one of us can decide what the legislature is going to do. And none of us, nobody in Washington State has any say in what the Ninth Circuit Court is going to do. What we can do is provide clarity and confidence to folks in Washington about what our rules will be, given the best estimate of what we have that will be in compliance with whatever that Ninth Circuit decision will be. I think we've got a path to make a set of rules that will work, that will be in compliance with whatever Ninth Circuit Court ends up deciding, and that will give our businesses in Washington State confidence in their ability to move forward in planning and designing buildings that will be built in the near future. I think we should go in that direction. Thanks.
Todd, go ahead.
Thank you. So I support multiple pathways on this. I agree. I'm obviously willing. I think everyone here is committed to doing additional work if our work is viewed to be unfinished and there's pathways to do it. I don't know that I fully understand that yet. So I'd like to hear more about what that possible pathway to take further action on this is. I'm also comfortable because it seems like we're in a certain channel and it's in motion. That it does seem very clear to me that we did not pass that threshold and it's headed to the legislature. But I think our work is still complete in that sense, that the two versions, as Micah referenced, it's called version 2022, version 2023, and is there. And I think there's significant coordination with the legislature to inform at that point what action they might take. Of course, it's in their prerogative. Our authority is granted by their power, so they of course should take action if they want. I guess my question, additional question, doesn't have to be answered right now. Is then it seems like there could be a third version, which is at the will of the legislature, and I sense there's, in the reason that the council has the authority to do this is that it is very technical and it's granted that authority for rulemaking purposes. That said, I think I'd be curious how the legislature approaches this and happy to inform that. So thank you.
Micah, go ahead.
Thanks. I do want to point out, I think that we did meet the 10 vote threshold last year with more restrictive provisions. And we are meeting the legislature's directive of reducing by 70% over 2006. And requiring the heat pump mandate is the best path to get there. I mentioned that before. It may not be the best cost analysis or cost ratio, as we talked about, but it is the best path forward. If, again, the legislature takes no action, we have a code. It is more restrictive. Yes, there's some risk there that the state may have litigation brought against them that says we're not meeting the Ninth Circuit ruling. Again, that was a risk we were all aware of. I'm actually quite surprised there's folks on here that are for wanting these heat pump requirements that are trying to put in additional rules to not mandate those. I understand that was the direction we were given or recommended. But again, if we take no action and the legislature takes no action on this disputed amendment, we get the more restrictive requirements that mandate heat pumps. We have rules in place. There's only one area or a few areas of the commercial energy code that have two options. One will be mandated by the legislature and one we've already adopted. I'm okay letting where it stands and again, let the legislature decide. If they take no action, we get a very robust, very progressive energy, commercial energy code. And again, I'm actually surprised at some of the comments on here from folks that I know are for that are kind of going, hey, maybe we don't want to go that route. So I appreciate the discussion. I look forward to whatever action we take. Thanks.
Damon, go ahead.
I'm a little concerned. I should have called for a point of order. Representative Ramel seemed to indicate he knew which direction Pete was planning to vote. And now it sounds like we're calling this meeting because Pete was unable to attend last time. So that bothers me.
Hi, go ahead.
Thanks. I just want to say that I do hope the Ninth Circuit acts on the petition, but until that time, I think there was my understanding of the advice that we got, and I'm not going to go into it because some of it was executive session, but I think there's a significant difference in the level of risk that we face if we have the first set of code go into effect versus this amended version. And I'm not comfortable with that first iteration, although I may agree with it in principle, but based on the risk issues and the changes, all the work that went into the changes, I think were a big positive, and I would support the appropriate action today, whatever that is. I still want to have that discussion and hear that, but I'm supportive of whatever the appropriate action is to try to avoid a situation where a very legally vulnerable set of changes go into effect and can cause us a lot of problems down the road.
Katie, go ahead.
Thanks, Ty. That's a lot of what I was gonna say as well. And just in terms of procedurally for the legislature, this might be a kind of simple question, but if it does sit through the the session, I mean, is it like does that end up vetoing it if they take no action, or is it by allowing it to sit through with no change, then they accept it? So just trying to understand what it would take on the legislative level. Is it a proactive thing that they have to do, or is it, and that would be their for one of the representatives?
Well, I thought Stoyan was just about to say something, and I absolutely don't want to speak for any of the legislators here who have forgotten more than I'll ever know about the legislative process. But I can say that there is no, to our collective knowledge, those of us who have been having some conversations about the implications of this statute, there is no history of the legislature having to actually perform this function under the statute under 1927 A0253. And so there's not a clear course forward on it. And maybe Stoyan was about to say this. What we do know,
yeah, we researched that, and everybody's using Wikipedia. I'm using Christopedia, and she didn't know that.
Christopedia. It's a real thing. What we do know about the effective dates, though, is that we currently have rules that are effective to go will become effective pursuant to CR 103 filing on March 15th. And those are the rules that were adopted last year that include the heat pump proposals. So if the legislature doesn't take action, my view is, and I think this is a consensus view, if the legislature doesn't take action, however, whatever that looks like, to approve these current amendments to the council, then those amendments do not go into effect. And by law, the previous provisions that were adopted and are set to go into effect on March 15th would.
Okay, so just to play it back to you, to make sure I understand. So for the amendments, those require action, but the one that we passed back in April doesn't require action.
I don't want there to be any confusion about that. That vote, is my recollection, was 11 members supported the Washington State Energy Code commercial, and that is in excess of the 2/3 threshold.
Yep. Okay, thank you. That's clarifying.
Roger, go ahead.
Yeah, I still want to, as Representative Ramel said, you know, I did call for this vote, and we've been sitting here talking for an hour, and we still have a whole lot of questions about whether it was an appropriate vote, what can and can't we, what could we do, what's required. So that was why I called the vote. And so any implication that we did it just to get Pete's vote, or to take power in some way away from the legislature, is completely false. I still have a question that I asked earlier, and I have not heard from Dirk. The assumption here is that the vote that we passed, that was 9-4, doesn't meet the 2/3 criteria. I'm looking at what we have on the screen there. It says with less than a 2/3 majority vote. When I look at, and I'm Googling it, so I don't have, I would like to see, I guess, the exact wording in Robert's rules for what the 2/3 threshold is. When I Google it and it talks about a majority vote, it is the majority of the votes cast, which we exceed 2/3 of the majority of the votes cast. So I need to understand from Dirk and or Stoyan, 2/3 of the majority of 2/3 of 15 is, yes, that's 10, but 2/3 of the majority of the votes cast is only 9. And the way I read Robert's rules, it's votes cast, not total votes potentially available. So in that case, if that's the case, if you take, in my interpretation of Robert's rules, we have met the 2/3 criteria, and we would not need to take any further action. And so that goes to the question that was just addressed. If we take no action today, does somebody have to raise their hand and say, wait a minute, this was not 2/3? Which code would take effect? I actually would think it would be the one that we just voted in November, with my interpretations of Robert's rules. So if we could get some explanation and clarity on, is there an officially, I mean, when I Google Robert's rules, you get California State. Is there an official Washington State version of Robert's rules that we are? So Dirk, if you could address that, I would appreciate it.
Sure. Okay, so the bylaws adopt the 11th edition of Robert's rules. There is no specific Washington version of Robert's rules, and I don't. I'm looking for it now. I don't have at my fingertips the exact sections that would govern this, but I can tell you that my analysis, and is shared by others that I've consulted with, is that 2/3 majority vote is the majority of members present when the vote is taken, not the 2/3 of the vote of people who took the vote, because a majority, the word majority here means ordinarily when we're talking about boards and commissions and governing bodies taking votes, a majority would refer to a majority of the members who are present. At that meeting, there were 14 members present. One didn't vote, and accordingly, that's the basis for the analysis. I should note too, and again, I don't have them at my fingertips right now. There is language in Robert's rules which addresses this point, and my understanding from Matt is that it too echoes that this conclusion that majority in this context means majority of members present. And you asked a follow-up question, which I don't want to miss, which is what happens if this is a contested issue? If there are members here or, you know, stakeholders who believe, hey, that vote there was fine. You know, that's an issue that potentially could be litigated in the future. And, you know, we would do our best to try to support the council. We, meaning your lawyers, would do the best to try to support the council going forward with that uncertainty.
Any further questions on that, Roger, at this time? Okay. Jay, go ahead.
Thank you. When we started this process after the Berkeley decision, the whole philosophy really has been about de-risking. And to Micah and Ty and Katie's comments and some of Roger's questions right now, us moving forward and taking action to correct the error that happened at our last meeting where we didn't have the vote of the chair is a part of this de-risking process to say, we believe, because what we've done up to this point is we believe that the modifications in the code that we adopted in November are better compliant with EPCA than the original version that passed. I still believe that and believe that that should go forward. The other piece is given the uncertainty that Representative Ramel and others have mentioned of the process going forward, is it would be preferable for us to take care of this as a state building code council from a legal standpoint to de-risk by taking action today. This isn't a policy decision, as Mike has pointed out. If no action happened today and no action happened by the legislature, the more stringent code would go into effect. This is about legal risk, and so I'd actually like to. I'm ready. I've heard a lot and ready to move forward to the next item of our agenda to say what are our potential pathways moving forward.
Point of order.
Newman, go ahead.
Jay, the chair is not obligated to vote in this, nor do you know what his vote would be, so I would not call it an error.
Well, I would look at it as an error in that we didn't ask. In areas previously, when the chair's vote is potentially dispositive, we do ask for that vote. Thank you.
Ben, go ahead.
Thank you. I think like the points I was going to make have already been taken, and like Chell, as part of the design community, getting clear direction and removing uncertainty on what the pathways moving forward for projects being in design or consideration are critical for the entire community to move forward. So I think it's really important if there is a pathway that is allowable and takes into full consideration all the full vote of the council, I think it would be recommended that we could take that path. So I think, as Jay and others have mentioned, I would really look forward to understanding more about what pathways are available and how they fit in with our procedural requirements. Thanks.
Justin, go ahead.
Well, after most of the discussion, my comment would be, we were given a job to do. Apparently we haven't finished that job. I'm not comfortable having somebody else finish my job. I never have been. So whatever we got to do to move forward and finish this, I think we need to figure it out. So my question would be, what path are we going to take? What's our avenue?
Micah, go ahead.
Thanks. A lot of questions, a lot of comments from folks. Again, I'm not even sure what the special meeting is for, to understand a RCW that was maybe not known or misunderstood at the time. So now we're here debating items again. we talk about risk. You're correct. We looked at this at a risk standpoint. The risk is still there. The risk is that the en banc ruling could occur or not occur, and we get a mandate for what has occurred now, and then we can come back and readdress this rule if necessary, if the legislature doesn't take action. What we're saying, if we take no further action today, which I don't see any reason why we need to, we took an action. Now it's up to the legislature to decide if the state wants to take on this risk of mandating heat pumps. If they don't, they can adopt the amendments that we proposed at the November meeting. So again, we did our work, which was provide the technical code changes for, at this point, 2 options for the legislature to decide. If they want to accept the risk and say, yes, we're going to move forward with mandating heat pumps, space heating, and water heating equipment for non-commercial or non-residential uses, they can do that in this next legislative cycle. And if they don't want to go down that and have that risk, again, we still don't know if that's a risk we needed to take. It was a recommendation. However, there still is no ruling about the en banc and whether or not we're going to mandate from the Berkeley decision. So we're speculating 2 paths here. I think the best path, again, would be to continue where we've already begun, which is we proposed heat pump, space heating, and water heating for non-residential. Then we came in and provided an alternate path that didn't fully get support of all council members. But the legislature could then decide whether or not we want to take that risk or not take the risk. And if they decide that they want to take that risk and a ruling comes in later, guess what? We can come back and propose this rule again as written and make changes at that point. But at this time, folks going, oh, we don't know what we need to do or design our buildings. The code's already written. It's been written for over a year. It's there. All we did was delay the implementation. Now we've made a modified rule that could go in effect, that could provide you with more options. But again, you could still meet the original code without issue. Thanks.
Todd, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. And Mike, I agree. I think the haze in the barn on we've now adopted 2 different commercial energy codes. And so, and from what I'm hearing today, I'm assuming that the most recent, even though it is adopted, it's a disputed provision, but that supersedes the 2022 adopted code, unless the legislature doesn't take action. So I'm ready. I'm willing to take action today, of course, after we hear public comment. But I'm still not clear if there is a pathway for us to take action. And then secondly, if we don't take action, it's not the purpose of this meeting, but I'm not clear on what the legislative pathway is either. If a bill is proposed and it goes through committee and we inform, but again, I think the work is already done. I just, that would be relevant to know also as chair of the legislative committee, what work we need to do in December to prepare for session, if that's the case. So thank you.
Justin, go ahead.
Well, I mostly agree that the work is already done. However, if we would have known about the 2/3 back in November, we might have actually finished the work and got it done, and we wouldn't be here talking about this now. I think the fact that that was overlooked, that's what opens up this conversation. We need to finish the work and the way we intended it back in November to be finished. So that's all I got. Let's get to it.
Bill, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm ready to get to it as well. I don't know what will trigger item 3 being done. Micah brings up a tempting path, and part of me really wants to do what you're suggesting. But in the case of the energy code, I know it's contentious, and I think, as Justin said, I'd rather finish the job we started. The legislature is already part of the process, as then this code will sit through a legislative cycle. So if they want to exercise an option to remove the EPCA provision that we passed, they have ample opportunity to do that in the upcoming session. So I think we're ready to move on from item 3, but I don't know what triggers that. Tony, do you have a sense of what triggers the completion of item 3 and the start of item 4.
After Pete and Damon, I'm ready to move on to 4.
Okay.
Pete, go ahead.
Point of order.
Go ahead.
This is Micah. Do we have an option for public comment on item number 3?
On item number 3, there's an asterisk by it. It says the council will not take public comment and will not be making any code determinations under this agenda item, but may at their discretion ask clarifying questions, which means the council could call on someone from the public, but we're not going to be entertaining public comment on this agenda item.
Thank you.
Thank you. Pete, go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to say that I wanted to give my thanks to those folks who reached out to me and expressed their well wishes in this time of considerable difficulty in my family. And so I appreciate that greatly. I do take my responsibilities at the SBCC very, very seriously and try to keep up on the details of this. And my request to Tony is that we hold this special meeting in order that I be allowed to have a vote in this subject matter as much as legally possible. And it's not clear that that's the case yet until you guys decide so. But I do want to express my thanks to all of you for your well wishes, and I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you, Pete. Damon, go ahead.
Did we send out emails to interested parties on this, just so they were aware of the meeting? I see we do have a fair amount of attendees, but I don't recall seeing an email outside of the council.
Go ahead.
A gov delivery notice was sent out.
Okay. All right, thank you. With that, we'll move on to agenda item number 4, 2021 Washington State Energy Code Commercial, possible council vote on CR 103P final adoption.
Point of order, Chair.
Yep.
Did 3 have public comment?
So there's an asterisk by the public comment that says the council will not take public comment and will not be making any
I'm
code
sorry.
determinations under this agenda item. So
My apologies. Thanks.
unless a council member wants to call on someone from the public, then we're not going to entertain a list of public comments. So Chael, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question for staff and council, and that is if we were to, so I have a couple of small amendments to make that could be made to the commercial energy code. But if we were to, I guess, reconsideration might not be in order, but is rescinding and then a motion to approve the commercial energy code with slight modifications, is that an in order set of motions, or is there a better way to approach what I've suggested I'm interested in doing earlier?
Here.
Well, I want to make sure, have we moved on to the next item?
Yes, we have.
Oh,
We're
okay.
on agenda item 4.
Good, thanks. Okay, Chell, and this question has come up a few times, and I'm definitely, I think, very interested in other members' thoughts regarding the parliamentary procedures. But Robert's Rules does speak to issues regarding, again, look at my notes, taking up a matter that had previously been decided by the council. And there's a few ways to do it. We discussed reconsideration earlier. As we've discussed, my view, and I think the view of several other members, is that would be out of order because reconsideration is, under Robert's Rules, is to be taken on the day of the vote or in a day immediately following it in the same session. And here that isn't happening. So other options could be, and these are ones that I've simply identified, would be a vote to rescind, which would be proper, would be properly made under Robert's Rules. This would be a vote to rescind the approved motion that was made at the previous meeting, the November 8th meeting. And that the effect of a positive vote on that, approval of that motion, would be that vote goes away. So the amendments that were approved at the previous meeting would no longer be approved. Or put another way, staff would no longer be directed to file the CR 103P on that. Without more, that would be where we're at. The November 28th rules would, not November 20th, excuse me, the 2022 code would become effective if no other steps are taken after rescinding the motion from November 28th. But if the council could then go on, if it so has the will, to make a motion to approve the energy codes in the either as amended or potentially with additional amendments, and then take a vote on that. But that's not the only path. There is, as I mentioned, something in Robert's rules that refers to a motion to amend something previously adopted. And the effect of that motion would be to take the previous motion and to essentially amend it. There wouldn't be, the motion wouldn't be amended, or wouldn't be rescinded rather. It would go forward in its current form, but with amended provisions to it. One thing I should note that Robert's rules provides that, and this is an important consideration. Again, I want to make sure I get this right, that a 2/3 vote is required for a motion to rescind and a motion to amend along the lines of what we were just talking about. And actually, let me just read the provision so that there's no confusion about that. These motions require a 2/3 vote, a majority vote when notice of intent to make the motion has been given at the previous meeting within a quarterly time interval or in the call of the present meeting, or a vote of the majority of the entire membership, any one of which would suffice for approving the motion. So by my reading of that, I do not believe notice of the motion was the specific motion was provided in the call for the meeting. So you would either need to have a vote of the majority of the entire membership of voting members, so that would be an 8 minimum, or a 2/3 vote, 10 votes, in order to approve a motion to rescind or to approve the motion to amend something previously adopted. That's my reading of Robert's rules.
Thank you. Follow up. Would a motion to amend pass muster with the 2/3 majority in the RCW that we've been mentioning that requires a 2/3 majority in order to not be a contested motion? Would that make the initial motion a not contested motion, or would it just make the amendment not contested?
The law provides that any disputed provision within an amendment presented to the legislature shall be approved by the legislature before going into effect. And a disputed provision is one which was adopted by the State Building Code Council with less than 2/3 majority vote. So my reading from that is if a substantive provisions amending the code are adopted with less than 2/3, then it would be subject to legislative approval.
So a motion to amend might not meet that threshold.
There would be some risk to that, is I guess the best I could offer.
So a safer path would be a motion to rescind followed by something else. Is that?
I would leave up to you the assessment of what the risk is. I would say that if it's a straight vote along the lines that you've just described, questions regarding whether something's an amendment and whether it meets the 2/3 threshold, obviously wouldn't be on the table.
Okay.
I hope it's too lawyerly of a response and you got the information you need.
All right. That's what I expect. So I am going to make a motion. Well, no, I'm not going to make a motion right now. I'm going to hand it over to some.
Damon, go ahead.
Question for staff. Stoyan, did we meet our December 1st deadline in filing the CR 103s with the Code Revisor's Office?
Krista, can you help with the due date?
Right, it was the council must make a decision by December 1st on the residential. It does not affect the filing date of the CR 103.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
A question for Derek, given some of the options that you had laid out. Is the motion to amend something previously adopted something that could be done as a single motion? Because in the interest of simplicity, it sounds like the other track of a motion to rescind and a motion to adopt would require two actions by the council. And I'm wondering if a motion to amend something previously adopted is something we could do with just one action.
The answer to that is yes, be a single motion.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Wilson.
Thank you. I'm just curious if there's a motion to amend and there's any substantive amendment in there, it is substantive, I should say. Wouldn't that have triggered a notice and comments that were required for public comment? If it's substantive?
So if you don't mind me answering the question, so it depends. Yeah, that's that lawyerly answer. You would be amending. So if the council were to consider taking that path, the motion would be amended. It wouldn't necessarily be a motion to further amend the energy code commercial. But if the council were to consider that as an option, I would note that the energy code commercial and other codes have been amended by the council following the rulemaking process. As a matter of fact, we saw that at the last meeting with several editorial changes made to the energy code commercial, and I think some changes too to the residential code. Whether that needs to go through the rulemaking process is a legal question. But all in all, it's not certainly not unprecedented for this council to make changes to proposed rules at the filing of the CR 103.
Okay. Micah, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm doing the face to palm thing. I'm kind of more confused on some things. Derek, if in going off of Jay's question of a motion to amend, that would be to amend the code or to amend the previous motion?
It would be
was approved.
I want there to be complete clarity. Let me give an example of what it might look like. And I'm taking this example from Robert's rules. And for those who are following along, it's the section 35 of the rules. It would say something like this. Sorry, I had it right here. I move to amend the motion that was relating to X adopted at the November meeting by inserting the following. That would be what an amendment of something previously adopted would look like.
Okay, so then my question would be, if you're amending what was previously adopted, would the amendment be the only item that got the 2/3 vote threshold and not the original motion? And so therefore, would that stand and still, or would that modify the need for the legislature to take action? Does that make any sense?
Oh,
They would still have to take action on the motion,
Micah,
correct?
really, that's a really good question. Because the vote there would be on the amendment and not on the actual separate motion that was approved at the previous meeting. The less risky approach, of course, would be to take, and I guess this, you forced me to say it, this answers Chel's question, the less risky approach to, if you're concerned about the 2/3 majority of the 2/3 threshold requirement, if you're concerned about that, then the less risky approach with fewer questions would be to take the vote to rescind and then take a vote on a new motion. Having said that, though, I think a carefully constructed motion to amend the previously adopted could work along the lines that you're discussing, Micah, to avoid these more challenging questions. But that would take a little bit of work, I think, to craft that motion.
Thanks, Derek. That kind of answered it for me. Kind of cleared it up some.
You nailed me down on that, Micah.
It's a tough scenario. I think what we're all questioning is risk. What's the risk here? What's the risk there? I mean, right now, what is being proposed is risking the previous action. The previous action has something moving forward. If you move to, I guess it's rescind, that action goes away. And you'd have to revote it again if we didn't get a threshold to, for support. Again, we're talking about risk. I assessed this before the meeting and during all the meetings we've had recently. The least risky path at this point is to let what we did at the last meeting stand. Let the legislature either take action or no action. I think the legislature might take no action and to say, hey, we're going to take this risk that we might get sued, and maybe we have to come back and address the rule then. But it may go in our favor, and the heat pumps as we've adopted would stay. I don't know. When you're assessing risk, I think we ought to let stand what the actions we've taken and move forward. I think that either way, we would end up with a path that we've all looked at and reviewed. And we're close on language for everyone. I don't think we're far apart considering we're at this point, but I think the least risky path is to let our action stand. Thanks. I'll stop talking.
Phil, go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to make a motion to rescind the motion to approve the commercial energy code, move it into a CR 103P process that was made at the November 28th meeting. And then I'm going to follow that by another motion after that one is properly disposed of.
I'll second. This is Jay.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Chad, would you like to speak to that?
I think I've said a bunch of things, but what really sways me to this is the legislature is already part of the process. They can do what they want because this will sit through a legislative cycle. I would rather have our risk in our hands than intentionally than have it be in other entities' hands. And I think we're just doing what the legislature asks us to do, which is putting a set of codes together. And I think the legislature could take action in their session if they want to, but I don't want to force them to take action.
Jay, would you like to speak to your second? Okay. Todd, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm supportive of this, but I think I'd like to ask for some clarification on a couple of comments, Shell, you made there. Is this the only code, the commercial energy code, that it is written into RCW that the legislature can take action if it's disputed? Because my understanding of the other codes is it does pass through the legislature, but there's not really a mechanism in place. Can someone explain that to us in the public a little better? Please.
If you don't mind, Tony, I can take lead on it. Yeah, I don't want there to be any confusion about this. This 2/3 threshold with for legislative approval, related to legislative approval, only applies to the Washington Energy Code commercial. Does not apply to the Energy Code residential, and doesn't certainly apply to any of the other codes. All of those are required to be approved by a majority of voting members and have been. The legislature, I guess the additional thought I would have would be the legislature could certainly take appropriate steps to address any one of those codes during the legislative session because they don't go into effect until March 15th.
Okay. Thank you. Todd, anything further?
But yeah, just follow up. I mean, is there precedent for that? That they have taken that action? Of course, it's in their power, but have they done that?
I would have to defer to folks who've been more engaged with what legislature has done, but there certainly are occasional legislative changes, for example, the EV charging provision was one that came down. And so we do see the legislature active in some areas with respect to building codes, but I would defer to people with more background.
Micah, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, one more thing. And if you were asking, Todd, is there a precedent with the legislature approving the energy code commercial because of a disputed provision, a failure to reach the 2/3 threshold? In our memory, there is no history of that or precedent.
Thank you.
Micah, go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'm surprised that the words came out from Shale that said we're doing what the legislator wanted. Actually, we're not. If these amendments were to move forward, you're taking a pause and a step back from reaching the 70% threshold in reduction. You're putting pause based on risk from a court ruling that, yes, affects us, but has not been fully mandated yet. So in my opinion, if you pause and you take a step back, we're actually not doing what the legislature asked of us. We're pausing that movement. Again, it's funny. I'm arguing for the heat pumps at this point when I thought the folks who have put the original code forward would be arguing the same thing I am and be supportive of this path. If you let the legislature possibly take action, they might not take action, or maybe there are influential legislators that can go, hey, if we let the rules stand as they were originally proposed in 2022, as Todd mentioned, then we get heat pumps, space heating, and water heating for non-commercial use or non-residential uses. And that gets us closer to our goal. So again, I think the path I'm laying out would be the best path or the best possible path to actually doing what the legislator tasked us with. The legislature has tasked us with reducing by 70% over 2006. Again, the option I'm laying out and not moving anything or not making any further modifications would allow that to possibly come to fruition a lot sooner. Thanks.
Okay, I'll go ahead.
Yeah, I think it is a tempting path, Micah, and I've said that before. I think there's two reasons why I'm not choosing that path. Is one is the I should have written it down. I forgot what I was going to say. One is the fossil fuel path in the commercial energy code is equivalent in terms of energy performance to the heat pump path in the commercial code. So by two independent modeling agencies, the fossil fuel path is not a step backwards in terms of energy performance. It requires other things to be done other than choosing a higher efficiency appliance. It allows an EPCA related appliance. So I guess that's, and then there's another reason that I'll remember it in a bit. But I would also, while I have the floor, make a motion to extend the meeting until 12:30.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to extend the meeting to 12:30. Discussion? Senator Wilson?
Isn't there a motion on the floor already?
There
We have to dispense with the first motion before we move on to a second motion.
I think the motion to extend is a privilege motion.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on the motion to extend? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any against? Okay, motion carries. Meeting will be extended to 12:30. Katie, go ahead.
Yeah, I just, since this is all in the interest of caution, before we vote on a motion to rescind, is it appropriate to talk about what the motion to amend would be so that we know what we're taking away? And, this is hard. I thought I reviewed Robert's rules pretty carefully, and I see this amendment, that the motion to amend something previously adopted that we're discussing. It does say that, we changed the motion. So moving it from CR 102 to CR 103, what is the language that we're going to amend? And it's not to say that we're precluded from doing this. I'm looking at the voting section of Robert's rules, which is in 44. I wonder, it says that we should have announced in the previous meeting on the 28th whether the motion passed by 2/3, and we don't have the notes, which is, I understand why, but what I remember is that we just said the motion passed. And so there was no ruling on whether or not the 2/3 happened. And so I guess, so because that wasn't made, there is an opening still to do that. I just don't understand. I guess I'm just, since we're being cautious, wondering what that amendment would be to the motion, so that before we rescind something, we're aware of what we're going to change it to.
Tony, do you mind if I jump in real quick on this? Okay, and obviously Chell can speak to his motion. As I understand it, Chell's moving to rescind the vote, and that would not be a motion to amend something previously adopted. If this vote is successful, if the majority of members agree to rescind the vote rather, from this last November 28th meeting, there would be no need to do a motion to amend something previously adopted, because it's no longer been adopted. It's been rescinded, and that would take that option off of the table.
I see. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Bill, would you like to speak to that?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Yes, I would make a motion that was similar to the motion made at the November 28th meeting to move the commercial energy code into a CR 103 process with all the amendments that were part of the that successful motion. And then I would also add another minor amendment that would move the heat flags from the option 2 to option 1 to go along with the math that we put in there as well. So that would be my motion projecting.
Okay, thank you, Chell. Micah, go ahead.
So I got procedural questions on that, but first, I want to comment on what Chell mentioned, that the fossil fuel path is equivalent to the other path. I mean, it sounds to me like you made the argument I was making before, that if it's equivalent, you wouldn't need the additional electrical readiness that you included in this amendment. However, I do have the procedural question now, that if you're looking to amend code language, would we not have to open that back up for public comment? And maybe that's a question to Derek or the chair, and public comment is not on the agenda. So would we be able to do that during this meeting and open that for public comment if you're looking to amend what we've already, what you passed, if the rescission is successful? Thanks.
It's my opinion that public comment would be required at that point, Derek.
It would be, I'm actually just looking for your agenda. I had it right here. There it is. Yeah, I would recommend that if there are proposed substantive changes made, then the public, for purposes of the OPMA, should speak to that specific agenda item.
Todd, go ahead.
So I'm not clear. Is the potential to take 2 actions today, and that's allowed? I'd like to hear that first, please. But if not, we would take this first action, which then now pulls away the disputed provision, which means then it would not engage the legislature. And I'm also concerned about that we open it up and we don't engage the legislature. So I want to make sure that there's a pathway, if you do rescind this, that within a certain period of time, which session is coming up in 3 weeks, that that this has a definite pathway. Thanks.
Sorry, Todd, is there I guess I'm asking if there's a question that needs to be
Well,
answered.
the question was, can we really take two actions today? Just can we get some clarity on that before we take this first action? Because my understanding is if you rescind it and can't take a second action, then we're not engaging the legislature on the.
Yeah, so I don't want there to be any confusion on this. The council can take a second action after rescinding the vote. The agenda item is for taking possible action on the 103P. And if you elect to take a vote on the same motion as last time, the council can elect to do that. If you want to amend that, you can do that too. Just know that if there's a successful vote to rescind the code, you don't have those code amendments that were approved last time.
Thank you.
Roger, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to vote against this motion for three reasons. Number one, we've all talked about risk, and I am not convinced that the risk of going down this path is in any way, shape, or form less than the risk of doing nothing. The second is a little bit of the impression to the public. I certainly have read the way our actions in November were discussed in the public, in newspapers, etc. And then the third one is this really does put this back in the power of the legislature. And the way I understand it is the legislature can do nothing, in which case I'm still not convinced that it's a disputed vote, but that's the majority understanding that that vote was a disputed vote. If the legislature does nothing, that vote is the vote of November is the code that would be in place in March 15th. If they choose to, if they choose to do nothing, the original April energy code is adopted, and if they choose to approve the amendments that we passed in November, then those amendments are approved. So, in my mind, it just puts the decision making in the hands of the legislature, and I don't see a whole lot of risk of the legislature doing anything besides those two paths. I don't believe, and maybe I'm incorrect in that assumption, but it really just says, here, legislature, we've passed these amendments, we passed them. They apparently are disputed. Again, I don't agree with that. It is in your purview to approve them or disapprove them. And if nothing happens, then they go forward. So I will be voting against this motion.
Bill, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm looking at the agenda from our last meeting where we did vote on this, and there was a public comment period, but it had the same asterisk, which is the council will not take public comments and will not be making any code determinations under item 3 of the last meeting under this agenda item, but may at their discretion ask clarifying questions. So my guess is if we rescinded, and I would love to hear Dirk's opinion on this, then the same thing might apply where council members could ask the public questions, but it is not a public comment where we line people up and have 20 people speak for 3 minutes or something like that. Is that correct?
Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me. I misspoke before. The OPMA, so thanks, Chell, for asking the question again. The OPMA does not generally would require for regular meetings that members of the public be permitted to provide either prior to the meeting a written public comment or public comment at the meeting. But that rule doesn't apply by the statute to special meetings. So that would be up to the discretion of the council, whether you want to have public comments.
And Chill, to add to this, the last meeting on 28, it was because it wasn't the entire code, so we had the work session and then we had the vote. So the asterisk was for the work session. Typically, the council doesn't accept comments during the work session.
Yeah, and I guess my point
Point of
was that there's not a hearing or public comment, I guess, as I would imagine it. There's not an open public comment at the last meeting where we adopted. So I guess I would expect if we rescinded and voted on something slightly different, I guess I would expect that there would not be an open public comment meeting that was different than last time.
Todd, go ahead.
Well, I had a point of clarification on that
Sorry.
question.
Go ahead, Micah.
An answer from Deer. My understanding is for this, and Chell, you might be referring to the previous agenda, but today for item 4, there is no notification in item 4 for public comment with an asterisk or not. So that was my question. If we modify any code change language for item 4 today, would that open it up for public comment today? Because that is not listed on the agenda with an asterisk or otherwise. So I don't know if that helps. I don't know how your question was relevant to the public comment today. And maybe somebody else can answer. I don't know.
Well, I'll just reiterate, Micah, what I just said. The rules under the OPMA would not require the public comment requirement, or the OPMA rather doesn't apply to special meetings. And there isn't anything under the Administrative Procedure Act which would specifically require a public agency to open up public meetings to public comment in the event that changes are made to a proposed rule. The question of whether or not there should be renewed public hearings under the APA, that goes to that question of whether there's a variance between the two, and we've been down that road before at the last meeting and previous meetings for purposes of the APA. But there, just make no mistake, there's not a specific requirement in the APA or the OPMA that there must be a public comment period or a public hearing for purposes of this meeting. There's one other thing I want to say too, and it's absolutely up to the council what you want to do for a matter of policy. I would note that if there is a vote to rescind the motion from the last meeting, there's nothing that would preclude somebody from making a motion for that is exactly the same as the previous time, with no amendments, with no changes whatsoever. I don't know if that's what anybody would want to do, but I just don't want there to be any confusion that is an option that's not on the table.
Thanks for that point of clarification, Jared.
Senator Wilson.
Thank you. So if this code is rescinded, then it's back to the April vote. And so that means none of this stuff happened as of November. Then adding the same changes that the November vote had is what I'm assuming is going to be intended, which would mean substantial changes from the April vote, which should trigger public comment. Regardless whether it is required or not, it seems to me that this council would want to have the public comment included. So am I correct in that it would be substantial changes if you're just rescinding the vote and then revoting the same thing that you just rescinded? Because it didn't, once you rescind, it doesn't exist anymore. So now it is substantial changes to the April, correct?
Tony, do you want me to respond to that?
Yes, please. But just to add quickly, I think that those other changes that were made and voted on, those did have opportunity for public comment along the way. And I think that would be the difference, but go ahead, Derek.
Right. So the way that I would think about this, Senator Wilson, is that proposed changes were made to the commercial code. There were public hearings on that and public comments that were provided and collected during the rulemaking process. That rulemaking process concluded with the final hearing on it, and this wasn't the November 28th meeting. This was a public hearing on the rules. And then with all that information, the council made a determination on November 28th that they wanted to move those rules forward for filing of the CR 103P with some modifications. And that was what the motion was. So if that motion is rescinded and then voted on again, it would do the same thing. But the public hearings and everything on the rules have already happened.
I agree to a point, but what you're doing is you're negating the vote that happened in November because you're rescinding it. So now you're starting the whole process over again. If you're negating, you say that vote should never have happened, which is what you're doing with rescinding, then you're starting the process over again. Right?
I don't think I would, speaking for myself, I don't think I would see it that way. It would simply be rescinding a motion which reflects the will of the council as to what it was going to do with requesting that certain forms be filed. And the council, in my view, can take steps to make that motion go away by rescinding it and then make another motion.
So doesn't that kind of put a question in your mind as to what the public's saying? Why did they do this? If they're rescinding to revote exactly the same thing they just voted in, why are they doing this? Which means the answer is so that it doesn't go to the legislature. That's the only reason. If nothing is changing. I'm just pointing that out because that's how the public will be viewing this as.
Todd, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. And Senator, I don't disagree. I think this was helpful. This is what I wanted in the meeting, was to better understand this RCW. And I think we should be very conscious of public perception on this. So, when I read 1927-025, it doesn't say that we shall achieve a 2/3 vote. So, if it's the will of the council to rescind and revote to achieve 2/3, that's one thing. If I'm for the purposes of completing our task, but you also have to look back. This provision, to my understanding, has been in here since 1991. The legislature intended something very deliberate. They had a chance in 2019, it seems, to amend it, and they didn't. So it also seems very clear to me what their intention was. So I'd be supportive of letting this go to legislature and then doing whatever we can to support the legislature in finalizing this. So, and as my record shows, I'm supportive of both versions of this bill. So I hope it does go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Before taking a roll call on the motion, for clarification, Derek, do we need 2/3 vote on the rescind?
The Robert's Rules provides that, I'll read it again, you don't need the 2/3 for purposes of the statute that Todd was just talking about, but for purposes of Robert's Rules, you would need 2/3 vote or a majority of the entire membership.
For the motion that's on the table right now.
For a motion to rescind.
Got it.
Correct.
Okay. Before going to Roger, I just because my vote may come into play on this, I do have some comments for discussion on what's on the table. I will agree with Senator Wilson, Todd, and Roger about the optics of this. There's a reason that the majority of council members is who called this meeting and not me as the chair, because I don't like the optics of it. And at least 2 comments today have said blatantly that the reason they wanted the vote or the meeting today was because someone was absent. And that is unprecedented in my time with the council, as short as that may be. I have never seen that, and I think the optics, we have to be very careful of what that looks like to the public. And I'll leave it at that. Roger, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to better talk about the risk. when I hear whether or not we should open it up to public comment, whether or not we can make a motion similar or identical to what we approved in November, that's unclear to me. I don't understand. I do not have a clear understanding of that one way or the other, and I think there is risk there. I go back to, and I apologize for not letting go of this, but you know, my online version of Robert's rules says 2/3 vote means 2/3 of the votes cast. I don't know if this is an updated version than what Dirk is looking at. I think the risk of this being a disputed vote in November is much less than the risk of us proceeding with this to rescind and then do something. I support the code as we have it. I want it to move forward in the least risky way possible. But I just looking at the risk of rescinding and then doing something besides the optics that Tony talked about, compared to the risk of not doing anything and somebody needing to make an argument that according to Robert's rules, 9 out of 13 is not 2/3. I would go with whether or not this is a disputed. I would actually have a hard time really legally saying that the November vote was a disputed vote. And I'll read what my version of the Roberts rules says. A 2/3 vote means 2/3 of the votes cast, ignoring blanks, which should never be counted. This must not be confused with a vote of 2/3 of the members present or 2/3 of the members, terms sometimes used in bylaws. To illustrate the difference, suppose 14 members vote on a question in a meeting of a society where 20 are present out of a total of membership of 70. A 2/3 vote would be 10. A 2/3 votes of the members present would be 14, and a vote of 2/3 of the members would be 47. That is odd that the numbers are almost identical, but the way I read that, and I'm happy to send this version that I have on my screen to everybody, but according to that reading of Robert's rules, the decision that we made in November is not disputed. We had 2/3 of the members, 2/3 of the votes cast. So that's why if I'm just talking about risk, and Dirk, I don't want to, you're an attorney and I'm not, but when I read that, I think the risk of somebody having to raise the flag and say what we did in November is disputed, I think there's pretty little legal risk in that. So compared to both the optics and the discussion as to whether we should or should not, whether we can do restate the motion that we passed in November, and is that so? Anyway, that's all I've got. And Dirk, if you'd like to respond, great.
Sure. I'll respond, and I appreciate it. Just to be clear, if that legal question arises in the future and is contested, and there's a potentially litigation or questions arise, we'd certainly be prepared to do the work that we need to support the council. I would say, at least in my view, I think there's some uncertainty on the answer. I'm looking at Robert's rules in section 44, and which says that a 2/3 vote when the term is unqualified means at least 2/3 of the votes cast by persons entitled to vote. So there might be some question as when we say votes cast, does that include everybody who was there or just the people who were cast? And again, this is just the language that I'm referring from the Robert's rules that has been adopted by the council. I guess I would note one other thing, for whatever it's worth. The issue that there be a 10-vote threshold for purposes of approving this code has been, I think, well understood by council staff and in the past. So that is sort of driving the risk assessment here in the analysis. But I don't want to suggest, Roger, that your reading is absolutely wrong. I could just say from my reading of it, my view is that we're not at the 2/3 threshold, and we can move forward accordingly. A judge might ultimately agree with me or agree with you, but my job is to make sure that you're all supported if it gets to that point.
And again, if I can just respond, my evaluation of risk is the whether the judge would agree with me or you on that reading, there's less risk there than the path of rescinding. And I will say, if we do decide to rescind, I certainly will support moving forward to re-adopt the code as it stands, but that's it.
Understood. Thanks, Roger. And yeah, all I can speak to is legal risk. Ultimately, everything else is up to the council.
Katie, go ahead.
I'm also mindful of the optics of this. I am concerned that if we rescind, it requires 8 votes. Is that correct? But to pass an amendment, we need 10. Those are the hard numbers, correct? So,
Wait, I'm going to jump in here. A vote to approve the council or the commercial code, if you want to hit that 2/3.
If we want it, yes, that's right. You're right.
Yeah. So my reading of that is it would be 10. A vote to rescind would require, according to Robert's rules, a majority of voting members, which would be 8 or 2/3 of the vote.
Got it. Yeah. No, thank you. Okay. Thank you. That's all I wanted to say.
Phil, go ahead.
Okay, I am going to withdraw my motion to rescind. And instead, I guess, do we need the second to agree to that?
Okay.
I'd like to hear more on your thinking
Yep.
before you make the motion.
Okay, I'd like to.
Make that withdrawal, please.
Sorry, Jay, I was speaking on top of you.
I'm wondering if you could share more of your thinking before you actually withdraw your motion, so I can make a decision on that. Thank you.
Sure. I heard from Dirk that it was also an option to amend the motion from a prior meeting, and that was not substantially less risky. And so I would replace it with a motion to amend, and I have an amendment that I mentioned earlier to that filing of the CR 103P for the commercial code.
I've got no objection as the second.
Okay, so withdrew the motion to rescind and replace it with a motion to amend. And Dirk, you had suggested that was a possibility. And so I'd like to make the correct motion. The amendment would be to include in table C406 the heat flags from option 2 into option 1. And that would be the amendment on the motion made at the November 28th meeting that passed the commercial energy code and many other kind of minor updates into a final rulemaking process. So that's my motion, and Dirk, I'm hoping you will help me make that what you implied earlier, or maybe suggested earlier, was also an option.
Right. So so it's tricky, right? So I'm going to just think out loud if it's okay with everybody. I think one way it could be styled would be to the proper styling of the motion, or the name of it is a motion to amend something previously amended or adopted, rather. So you could say, I move to amend the motion that relating to the adoption of the energy code at the November 28th meeting by inserting the following language. One thing you want to be mindful of, though, when you're doing that is, and this is what Micah was getting at before, is that if you if you make that motion right now, again, sorry, excuse me, I'm thinking out loud. If you make that motion right now, and there's approval of it, say by 10 members, there might be an argument or suggestion that you still don't have those 10 votes for the previous one. And so as part of your motion to amend, you could potentially say, let's see, what could an option be? As you could say to approve the motion, to make an emotion to the provisions that were adopted before as amended or something along those lines, to sort of include some language to be clear that the vote will be on readopting that code language in addition to the new language. And if that made no sense and was terrible, I'll give it another shot.
Okay. Ty, go ahead.
Yeah, so this is getting in and around what I wanted to ask about, because when Micah previously asked and I had the same question, I understood that there was a way to do it, but it wasn't clear to me how to do it. And then Derek, you sort of thinking out loud helps me. So it feels like it needs to say something to the effect of approving the previously adopted code provisions with the addition of whatever Charles got, lined up. Because if you just say insert your original formulation, inserting, then I feel like we're going to get an argument that the 2/3 only applies to the insertion. So it needs to somehow broaden it out and make it, and it's just what you said, but I guess I'm suggesting maybe with the addition of language implies embedded in it that it's something larger with this addition as a complete whole. But yeah, I want to be really, for me, here we're teetering on two different pathways, and Chell withdrew his motion, and I'm a little bit, I want to be really careful that we're accomplishing what we're trying to accomplish with this proposed change of strategy and using the motion to amend a previously adopted item. So if my suggestion works, if there's another one better, sorry, I want to make sure we nail that down.
Jill, do you have something further, or can I move on to other comments?
Yeah, I'll, I guess, restate the motion with the intent of the motion. The motion is to amend the motion relating to the energy code, commercial energy code at the November 28th meeting by inserting the language, and it's shown on the screen. I mentioned it earlier, adding the prorating heat flags. This includes the readoption of the code language included before, along with the new language. That's the motion.
Jay, do you have any objections to that? Okay, Micah, go ahead.
I'm just gonna keep it simple. Just chill. Don't do this. The perception of this looks terrible. There's no point in it. We have code language, two different paths. I'm just, that's it. This is bad. Bad path, bad direction. Please don't do it. Thanks.
Damon, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't see that this is in order. We can't simply tack on an amendment or two and then come back and revote the whole CR 103 again. That's completely out of order.
Thank you. Tom?
Yeah, I totally agree with all of that too. I don't have these tables memorized. I don't know what the implications of them will be to the final code. There's no time to consider anything here, and how it, what the other consequences of doing this would be. So I'm not going to vote in favor of this at all, period.
Hey, Jill, go ahead.
Just to be clear, the prorating flags were part of the public comment period. They were part of the option 2 that was in the CR 102. So they've been part of this whole code. And if you've been following along, you're well aware of those pieces of the code. So this is nothing new. The adding the prorating flags is an oversight that we didn't take care of at the last meeting. To Micah's question, I guess, are you more in favor of the rescinding and revoting thing, or is this somehow worse? in your mind, I can't tell. And I'm interested in hearing from you on that.
All answer to this has nothing to do with code language, is why I'm asking not to do this. We have code language. It's been debated. It's been through a robust public process. Both options have done that. And now we're coming back, and honestly, this looks like the folks are just trying to get to 10 votes and not go to the legislature. And for what reason? We're not arguing that the code language is bad. We're not arguing that we don't have options. We're saying there's no need for this. Let the legislature decide the risk on this one item, and let's move forward. Perception from the public and from those we serve, the optics are terrible. And I don't want to be a part of that. This is a substantial council with, awesome members that have great debates and super technical, impressive technical knowledge and skills and varied backgrounds that represent this state. And this looks like we're just trying to get something to go through when we already got it to go through to some level. Just the perception's bad. That's it. It has nothing to do with code language, Chael. Thanks.
Okay, with that, we have a motion on the table in a second, so let's go ahead and do a roll call. The motion is to amend the CR 103P that was adopted the November 20.
No,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna have. So I'm sorry. One thing, first of all, there isn't precedence for this, so we're still trying to feel our way through. And I just want to make sure that the council ends up voting on something that is close to, according to well under Robert's rules, and does what Chael is proposing, what the council wants to do. The amendment wouldn't be to amend the CR 103. It would be for purposes of amending the motion that was approved at the previous meeting. So there's ways to formulate that. If I can offer up another suggestion would be, I'm not suggesting that the motion be withdrawn and a new motion made, but a simple formulation is this: you move to amend the motion that the council adopted at its November 28th meeting that did X, Y, and Z, so that it would read ABC. That's the amendment, and then you take the vote on that.
Okay.
I believe that was the language, roughly the language that I use.
Agreed. Chael, I think that yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm just saying I want everybody here to be clear about what the vote is on, and it's not a vote on the CR 103. It's a vote. Okay.
Okay. Bill, I'm gonna have you restate your motion. Before we do that, Justin, go ahead.
So I'm confused. I thought if we vote on an amendment, then we only meet the threshold on the amendment. It has nothing to do with when we actually implemented it back in November. So we've really done nothing but add an amendment to it at that point, correct?
I think there's a risk of that. That's why I suggested that if you carefully compose the motion to be clear that it is, you're taking a vote on everything, that potentially could mitigate the risk, although it'll be up to you as to whether or not you think that Chael's motion does that.
So Derek, just to be clear, if a 2/3 vote takes place in favor of, that's just for the amendment, not the November 28th.
If you properly restate what the last motion did, and then identify what the amendment to that approved motion is, then that's what your vote would be on. And listen, there could be legal arguments that there's risk associated with it. I get that. What's approved, what's not approved, and maybe Roger's right, and the previous one was approved anyways. Like, again, all those questions are out there, but at least for purposes of taking this vote, that would be the way to construct it.
Todd?
And so just to be clear, there's no way to take this vote if there's not an amendment to change something. Is that correct? To change
There's
this?
well, it'll be up to the chair. This would be a motion to amend something that was previously adopted. That's what's been made. So there would have to be.
Hi.
Yes, I'm just curious on the ambiguity or the lack of clarity about the formulation of the motion to amend. And when we talk about, well, there's a risk that would be interpreted as just being the amended piece. When we say risk, do we mean risk? What do we mean? Do we mean that the legislature could just say, no, I find that there's these disputed provisions, and then they move along? Or is it something more onerous or convoluted than that? Is that the risk we're talking about? Is the legislature just says, nope, those are disputed provisions, we're gonna act? I mean, if that's the risk, that's not a very big risk from our perspective.
To be sure, I guess my reaction to that, Ty, and it's a very good question, is the lens that I look at is the risk of what litigation potentially could look like. And we haven't seen any indication of litigation one way or another with respect to this last go around. So there isn't any pending lawsuits, threatened lawsuits. But in order to mitigate the risk of potentially a judge being called in to make a determination on it, those are the considerations that I'm taking into it.
Todd, go ahead. You're muted, sorry.
If it's been said, I'm sorry, but can someone please restate what the process of approval by the legislature is? Is it submitting a bill and going through committees, or is it some other process that we're not aware of? I'm not clear. Thank you.
From staff standpoint, we don't know what the process is. It never happened before. If our ex officios or the attorneys can help clarifying the process, will be great. But after our research, we didn't find any precedent. We don't know how to approach this.
Senator Wilson, would you like to speak to that?
Well, nothing can get through the legislature unless it's an initiative or a bill. So in order for us to act, it would have to be a bill to the legislature. So the changes to this code would have to be inserted into a bill properly done by the code reviser. And then we would have the ability to, that's the part I'm not sure of, is who would actually be introducing it. So that's a good question. But it would have to be put into bill form, and then or a resolution. I suppose a resolution could occur as well. But at that point, then there's the opportunity for changes, as in any bill. Anyway, that's a good question, but it's probably going to have to be in bill form, resolution form, initiative. We'll have to look into that.
Yeah, if I could just offer one other thought on this, definitely defer to Senator Wilson on the legislative process. I will note that if anybody has any, if it does go down that route, if anyone has questions whether the governor would be in a position to have to approve it one way or another, the statute only refers to the legislature. It doesn't refer to any other public official.
But I'm going to make a motion to extend to 1 o'clock.
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion specifically on that? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Motion carries. Meeting extended to 1 o'clock. Pete, go ahead.
Yeah, as Derek pointed out earlier, the criteria that we need to meet was 2/3 of persons entitled to vote. As I was not present at the last meeting, I presume that means I was not entitled to vote. in which case I believe it was either Roger who says that we actually did meet the 2/3 objectives with 9 out of 14 votes, or 9 out of 13 votes. So what my goal here is to make sure that my vote somehow gets into the system. I want to be entitled to vote. And I would like to reiterate that I have not discussed what my vote would be with any of the members of this council. And so nobody can presume what I am going to vote and how I'm going to vote on any of these things. But as far as I can tell, as what Dirk said, 2/3 of the persons entitled to vote, but I was not entitled to vote as I read it. So by not attending. But if that is the case, then we met the 2/3 criteria. So, like getting back to the original point here. Thank you.
Todd, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. And Peter, I agree. I mean, I think the membership has not changed. I'm supportive of every council member getting a vote for their representation. I'm just not clear of the pathway, and I think a third option I would like to hear about, or the council discuss, is tabling this and doing another meeting with public process so that we understand clearly what the legislative process is, or what our option is to move this forward on our own vote. So putting it out there. Thank you.
Okay. Any further, Chell, go ahead.
Yeah, just wanted to kind of summarize those things. Passing this, in my opinion, is about us engaging in self-determination. We saw a risk with EPCA, we passed it. However, I and others were not aware of the 2/3, and what we saw in the last meeting was it was 2/3, but then we heard later that it wasn't in fact the 2/3. If this was about passing a code, we've already passed a code. This was about passing amendments to the code that we thought, we agreed as a group, would de-risk under EPCA. And so in my estimation, this is about reducing the risk and helping the council against potential litigation. And so I think making sure that the legislature always will have their say, because it sits through a legislative cycle, but making sure that we are, we're the council, we're in charge. This is an open public meeting. The last one was an open public meeting. Nothing is shading is going on. This is all recorded. People can watch it for years or decades later. So to me, this meeting is about self-determination based on things that came to light after the meeting, after the last meeting, where we didn't talk about the 2/3, and many of us were not even aware of it. So that's, in my opinion, what the motion is about.
Micah, go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I think we need to get on with this, of course, but I definitely want to hear from Tony. I think you had some stuff you wanted to share as well. We keep interrupting and not letting you go, but I hate to say this because I'm not always the most politically correct person, and you all know that I share my opinion openly, but not knowing the rules is not a reason to come and have a special meeting for multiple hours on end to try to revote something. Thanks.
Tom, go ahead.
And I just would like a little clarification on where we landed on public comment when the CR 103 is going to be changed, if this should pass.
It's my understanding that if this were to pass, then there would not be an opportunity for public comment on the change that's shown on the screen. Is that correct, Derek?
Right, because the motion would be to direct the staff rather to file a CR 103P, which would include this amended language.
And we don't have any risk there at all.
Well, I certainly wouldn't want you to hear from me that there's no risk at all on any of the things that we're discussing here. I would note that changes were proposed to the code at the last meeting. And those changes were and staff was directed to make those changes to the code language. At least in my view, this looks like would be something similar. And that's not to say that there is no risk associated with that, because as we've discussed before, the APA has some requirements regarding what a final rule looks like compared to a proposed rule, and there's some requirements regarding substantive changes and the rest. But it certainly isn't unprecedented for this council to make changes to rules after the public hearing, public comment period has ended. In fact, I should note that's part of the reason for the public comment period, is to give the public an opportunity to help educate the council on whether changes need to be made to the rules.
Todd, go ahead.
One last note is we don't know, at least I don't, what happens if we table, because what happens if the legislative process is initiated? Does that mean we can't continue with our work until March 15th and still take action sometime during session? So I just raise that question because I don't know. Thank you.
I think that again, sorry, Tony, apparently I have liberty to jump in, and I'm sorry
Yes,
if I
always. Please do.
Thank you. I shouldn't have said that. Part of, I guess, a response to what you're saying, Todd, is that the statute we're referring to does require that changes have to be made, sorry, rather decisions to amend the code have to be made before December 15th by the council. And so that would suggest that additional action on this might not be appropriate.
Okay, that's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Well,
Okay. Anything further? Okay, Chell, please restate your motion.
Thank you. So the motion is to amend the motion relating to the commercial energy code at the November 28th meeting by inserting the language on the screen about adding the prorating flags as shown in option 2 for the tables in option 1, which is the option that was part of that motion. This includes readoption of the code language included before, which included option 1 and a list of minor corrections based on public comment. So this includes readoption of the code language in option 1 plus all those minor corrections that were included in the motion on November 28th, along with this new bit of language as well.
Okay, with that, we will do a roll call.
Al Anderson,
Yes.
Jay Arnold,
Yes.
Todd Bayreuther,
Yes.
Justin Bourgo,
Yes.
Micah Chappelle,
No.
Damon Doyle,
No.
Tom Handy,
No.
Roger Harenga,
Yes.
Matthew Hepner,
Yes.
Craig Holt, are you there, Craig? Ty Menser,
Yes.
Ben Omura,
Yes.
Pete Reiki,
Yes.
Katie Sheehan, Katie? I didn't hear you.
Sorry, yes.
Thank you. And again, Craig Holt. And motion passes 10-3.
Okay, anything further on agenda item number 4?
Do we have to go through this again since Craig Holt wasn't here? Maybe that's a smart ass comment, but interesting. Thank you.
Quickly, this will, unless another special meeting is called before the 15th or something after the 15th, in between January 1st, this will be my last council meeting as I've taken employment elsewhere. It will not allow me to continue to serve the rest of my term. So it's been fun. It's been quite the experience. So thank you everyone that I've served with. It's been a privilege. Micah.
Tony, thank you very much. It's been a privilege working with you. My term is up in January. I did not seek reappointment, so this may be my last meeting as well. I appreciate everybody's time and efforts over the years. I will, of course, continue to be involved as this is my job, but thank you, Tony. So it sounds like this may be yours and my last meeting, at least as council members. So take care, Tony, and thank you for your work.
You as well, Micah. Thank you. Damon.
I just want to echo Micah's comments. Tony, you've been phenomenal. I can't imagine a better member of this committee, chairing this committee. So thank you for all your time.
Thank you. Jay.
Tony did amazing work, not just in corralling all of us, but managing public hearings through lots of interesting comments and lots of public input, and really set a high bar for the chair of this. Thank you for your work.
Thank you. Tom.
Yeah, Tony, I salute you too. You know, I mean, you've chaired some of the most difficult meetings that I've ever been in procedurally. And, you know, you've done it with, you know, calm, collected, you know, and good naturedness. And so I really appreciate that. And Micah too, I've always appreciated your comments and your steady perspective on things. You know, I'm going to certainly miss hearing your comments, and I'll probably call you as we go forward for your points of view. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Senator Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. I also wanted to thank you for the professional way that you have handled this council and all the meetings that we've gone through. There has been some very interesting times, but I do appreciate the way that you handled it, as well as Micah. We haven't always agreed on many things, but I do know that the information that comes from you is based on actual expertise and knowledge. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much, and good luck to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Roger.
Yeah, I also want to say thank you to both of you. The Robert's rules and are new to me. So going through this process of public meetings, and I couldn't have had better mentors and examples in both Tony and Micah. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Todd.
Yes, likewise. Thank you both. And I want to remind everybody that we probably will see more of Micah. So although I'll miss having you on the council, I know we'll see a lot of you. So good luck to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Tony, I want to thank you for your leadership, and especially I want to apologize for making your very last meeting one heck of a bureaucratic issue. And to Micah, quite frankly, you're one of my heroes on this council. Your knowledge in this area was something I took incredibly seriously, and it's great pleasure working with you. Even though I'm pretty much inept and incompetent at this, at least I feel inept and incompetent at this. But with your advice and your leadership, I have learned an enormous amount. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chell, go ahead.
And I want to thank you both as well. Whether we agree or disagree, you guys both bring a high level of professionalism and competency to this, and that makes it a great discussion always.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thanks.
Usually we have thank you notes, but we are unprepared this time because first we didn't expect the special meeting, and so the you guys leaving will make us sad. Micah was my favorite sparring partner here, so I'll miss him, but I'm sure he will come back as a public. And
I'll be around.
Tony was my partner in crime, so I can buy you this dinner that there won't be any conflict of interest now. So thank you guys. I appreciate my time with you and your time being council members.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Justin, go ahead.
I just want to say thank you for your guys' professionalism. You guys are top notch, man. I appreciate working with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, with that, we'll go ahead and adjourn, and thank you everyone for showing up today and being available on short notice, and thanks for all your work. Appreciate it.
Take care. Thank you.
Everybody,
Thank
happy
you.
holidays.
Yeah, thanks.